How Prince Melzard's tragedy broke my heart. Hi everyone, All Things D&D is back with another story. Our favorite characters are born of tragedy. What better motivator is there than the tragic loss of a loved one? Disney has been playing that trope for, well, ever. But they aren't wrong, and this story really highlights the impact of good character flaws, leading to a tragic end. Tell us about your tragic story after listening to this one. My D&D group and I are mostly roleplay based in our game style, and the games that had me go through an intense emotional journey are the ones that are always at the forefront of my D&D memories. Therefore, my most memorable game as a player was bound to end in tragedy. This all takes place in a homebrewed setting, co-created by the DM and myself. Playing with the same people for several years has many advantages. Of those, me and my playing group had the opportunity to do a multi-generational game, where we would play the children of some of our previous characters in a new campaign. I had played a lawful good paladin named Zen in our first campaign. I made him as nice and good as I could, a man trying to advocate tolerance at every occasion, in a world where prejudice was common. He eventually discovered that he was the descendant of a lost royal line, and after defeating an orc invasion with our gaming party, he got to marry Valence, the princess with whom he had fallen in love. So on our second campaign, I decided to play Zen's son Melzard. Zen had become king, and was able to help bring prosperity and peace to the land. He even succeeded at bringing some tolerance in the people's mind, making them accept the death goddess of their dark elf neighbor kingdom as a non-evil religion. But doing all this, he had grown old a little faster. I wanted Melzard to be different from his father. One thing I like to do in all my characters is to give them personality flaws, so for Melzard I chose lust. He was a good man, aiming to be as wise and benevolent as his parents, but he just loved being tempted by men and women alike, too much for his own good. Little did I know that the DM would be able to use this flaw in just the right moment to change my character and the entire game for good later down the line. Melzard was a paladin like his father, but of a different god, the god of travel and exploration. Once he was of age, the king and queen gave him his first quest, along with two companions, a human rogue, related to a characters of the previous campaign, and therefore a childhood buddy of the prince, and a dark elf death priestess, who was there as a specialist on the place where we were going, and an unofficial ambassador to the kingdom's new alliance with the dark elf people. From then on, the trio went on several adventures, with recurring dark themes: haunted prison, possessed lighthouse guardian, etc. Melzard was feeling troubled by those encounters, and was deeply thinking that the world seemed very different from the one of his father's stories. Weirdly, there was some fascination for the macabre inside of him that he wasn't able to reconcile with how he saw himself. But he managed to forget this by indulging in flirts and conquest at every tavern stop. We eventually were sent to tame a rebellion from the orcs formerly defeated by our parents in the previous campaign. The orcs were manipulated by an evil wizard that briefly sent our group to a parallel dimension where we had to fight our evil counterparts. Getting to kill a violent and cruel version of himself disturbed the prince greatly. After this mission, we went back to the capital, where Melzard witnessed the death of his father. Before dying, King Zen told Melzard that he was proud of him, but Melzard didn't feel worthy of this pride because of his secret fascination for the dark and for what it had made an alternate version of himself become. That night, he had a vision of his maternal ancestor, a queen of forgotten centuries that was feared in the land. She showed him a place to dig outside the capital. He awoke, soaked in sweat, and the vision cemented in his mind. Melzard didn't spare any time getting dressed, grabbed a shovel and went digging. There he uncovered the vampiric sword of his ancestor. When he took it, he had another vision of a beautiful woman on a backdrop of a destroyed realm. Melzard first thought that he was seeing his ancestor, but when the woman touched him, he suddenly knew that it was the goddess of death and lust, choosing him as her new champion. When he came back to himself, he could feel the sword talking to him through feelings. It was hungry for blood. No longer was he a paladin of the god of travel, and that was all right with him. The next week was the coronation of my character. All the rulers of the neighboring nations were there. Long story short, after a lot of political discussion and our recent vanquishing of the orc menace, Melzard was engaged to a beautiful princess of a northern kingdom and made emperor of the region. In a controversial move, the new emperor then made the goddess of death the official religion of the empire. After that began a time of peaceful changes. While the influence of the empire was solidifying, Melzard was courting his new empress, between some hero-level adventures with his two main advisors, the high priestess and the former rogue, now first bodyguard of the emperor. Each time he killed someone with his new sword, he was aware of the pleasure felt by the sword in the act of killing. He knew it was wrong, but it also made him a little more powerful each time. At the end of one such adventure, he was back at the capital resting a bit, when a beautiful ambassador from another land came to see him privately. While she was flirting with him, he thought of his new wife, but decided to submit to his desire for a few moments. Nobody would know, he thought. An hour later, the palace's alarm started to ring. Melzard got out of bed, seeing that the ambassador had already left. After rapidly getting dressed in full armor to answer the alarm, guards arrived to tell him that his wife had just been murdered by an assassin and that his bodyguard was in pursuit. Melzard went silent for a long moment. After the initial shock passed, the emperor didn't waste one more second and went to see the body of his wife. He took her in his arms and ran to the palace's church. There, he ordered the attending priest to resurrect the empress. The priest began the ritual, but nothing seemed to be happening. Melzard looked desperately at the priest for an answer. "She doesn't want to come back, Your Majesty. She says that she saw what you did and that she's too devastated to come back." After a tearful minute of silence, Melzard screamed louder than he ever had, making the priest recoil in fear. He was feeling every emotion he didn't want to. He had been right not feeling worthy of his father's pride. He himself was responsible, but he was nothing but a pathetic pile of guilt. My character looked at the statue of the goddess of death behind the altar, where his former wife's body was laying, and unsheathed his sword. He thought to his sword, "Here's something you will enjoy." He felt the sword's excitement at the thought, and then he impaled himself on his own sword. It could have ended there. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Melzard was then in front of his goddess. She talked to him softly with a charming smile. "I am disappointed in you, my champion. You have no place at my side anymore. Go back." He reopened his eyes, lying on the floor of the church. He wasn't breathing, and his heart was silent. He was now a death knight, yet still perfectly capable of his own actions. He got up, removed the sword from his torso, and slowly walked toward the exit of the church. "All existence is suffering. Nothing else matters," Melzard said to himself out loud. "Everyone must know." The former emperor then began his rampage. He killed everyone he came across in the city, while his former companions were busy running after the empress's assassins outside the city walls. When they came back to the capital, it was partially in flames, and people were fleeing the city. There was more to this campaign, but this story is the one I wanted to tell. The DM later told me that the ambassador with whom Melzard was unfaithful was in truth the death goddess in disguise. I had been played, and I loved it. After that campaign, Melzard became a recurring NPC for future generations. Having stopped his carnage at the edge of the city, he ruled over his ruined city with an army of undead, literally representing the goddess of death in the world. So that was my most memorable game ever. It's been more than 10 years, and I still love that character to this day. Heartbreak and self-pity can make a man do terrible things. The DM and player did a great job of using well-done character flaws to develop a beautiful, tragic story. This is what D&D is supposed to be. Please let us know what you think and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Things D&D. Our videos are posted every Tuesday and Friday, so stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content.